It is the We Are You Morning Crew, and I am George Daigle. Yes, you're in the right place to get sizzling subjects, trending topics, and great music, ladies and gentlemen. Tune in each and every weekday morning beginning at 6 a.m. until 10 a.m. The rest of the crew will be back in tomorrow, Jana, Nova, and Nate. Right now, I have two very special guests in the studio with me. I have Jamie Freya Knott. See, I'm getting gooder and gooder each time. And Alex Santiago, they're both in the studio with me. And there was a story that I was sharing with them during the break, and I'll share it with you, the audience, and we'll have a conversation about it. A transgender man and his girlfriend say that he was the victim of a hate crime, when several men beat him up at a bar over the weekend. Now, Shay Devereaux and his girlfriend were at the Coyote Bar and Grill in Carlsbad, California, for drinks when they say they were approached by three men. The group got to talking, and at some point, Devereaux said that he's transgender. Now, as the couple was leaving the bar, witnesses said that the men followed them out and got into an argument with them that involved name calling. One of the men pushed Devereaux, and he fell back on the ground, hitting his head. Police say that they showed up and opened an investigation. Devereaux refused medical care and walked home. Now, according to police, they say there was a GoFundMe page was set up for him to help cover medical expenses. And the fundraiser's description says that Devereaux suffered from a fractured skull and back injuries and that he was hospitalized. They say Shane can't talk, can't move, and can't use the restroom alone since this incident. He is in dire pain. Now, police recorded the attack as mutual combat and said that alcohol was involved. Two of the alleged assailants fled the scene before police showed up. But his friend, April Peavy, told a local news network that she believed it was a hate crime, that it is the assumption of what we're gone with because we all know Shane. We know he wouldn't have started a fight. We know that he wouldn't have been aggressive towards anybody. So that's the only justification that we can come up with, that they would do this. So there's no other reason. Now, Monday, 2 days after the attack, Devereaux's girlfriend gave police a statement that said, led them to investigate the attack as a possible hate crime. Clearly, this is a hate crime. I don't even understand why they go through this rigmarole. They said they've received conflicting statements about what occurred, and we are working hard to sort out the information and find the facts. We take allegations like these very seriously in Carlsbad. So let's start with you, Jamie, and what are you thinking about this story? And I'm sure that you've heard stories like this from the community. What do you think?
I mean, I think it's just been such a like shaky time for just like interactions with the police in general. I mean, it's unfortunate, because like we were talking about it a little bit. A lot of that goes undocumented and like not spoken about a lot. And I think that's the biggest like issue with all that is not so much just what happens, but the fact that everything becomes silenced or almost gets erased by like a lack of coverage or a lack of like knowledge amongst us in the community. I don't know. It's hard for me to speak on it specifically from the perspective of like a trans man and like knowing exactly what that feels like. But it's unfortunate. It just seems like it gets worse every year. But
Yeah, speaking to you, Alex, a trans man in the community, is it just our presence or the presence? I'm saying like our. Sorry, excuse me. I'm not a trans man. But is it our presence that or the presence that is threatening? Is it the supposition that a trans man shouldn't have a space in cisgender society? What do you think that is?
I absolutely think that's a part of it. A lot of a lot of people within our own community don't take trans men seriously. So
Mm-hmm.
why would we expect the cisgender community to do that? I have my sisters who I fight tooth and nail for that don't take me seriously, as a man.
Mm.
I've dated, well, I have a girlfriend now who's trans, but I've dated a trans girl in the past whose friends have told her, you're too real to be with him. You could be with a real man,
Wow.
So I get that within my own community. So why would I expect the cisgender community to be any different?
Mm-hmm.
But I feel that when it comes to a lot of people in our community feel like trans men have it easy because, for lack of a better word, we pass. But that's so far from the truth. For me, if I'm getting pulled over by the police, I'm concerned about being black, because that's the first thing they see.
Mm-hmm.
And then being trans,
Mm-hmm.
because now I have two stigmas over me, as far as, a society that doesn't fully accept, people for who they are. So I have two things to worry about. And God forbid the ones of us who have to go to jail,
Mm-hmm.
where do they put us?
Right.
So it's not easy, being a trans man. And that incident in California was absolutely a hate crime.
Yeah.
If everything was fine before, he divulged he was trans,
Yeah.
then it was absolutely a hate crime.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a lot of cisgender people who want to show us, what we really are.
Right. Right.
I'm using air quotes. I know you guys can't
Yeah.
see me, but,
You're right.
And want to, teach us a thing or two. Trans men are murdered. Trans men are raped. Trans men are beaten. And like I mentioned to you earlier, and it's not in the news.
Yes. Right.
We hear about our sisters being murdered and being beaten, being robbed, being attacked, but you never hear, or rarely hear, about trans men.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, that narrative has to change.
Now, we were speaking before we actually went into the break, and my question was, do we think that we don't hear about trans men because of the being stealth, not being, what's the word, as visible in the community, outwardly, like we were talking about, Jamie, you have the beard, you have the presentation of a man, and unless they, look below, if you haven't, surgically changed, they wouldn't know. So is it because of that, or do you think that might be the reason we don't see it a lot?
Do you think it's safe also, and not to jumping on the question?
No.
I've had experiences in the past being around trans men, and if you divulge that to cisgender men, it's a lot of hostility. I've seen that happen before. The hostility from cisgender men. Do you think there's a way for trans and cis men, specifically black men, to become closer or be open in that way to see each other more, or do you think is it just more too far off?
Okay, so I'm gonna answer his first, because I definitely got you on that one. So I don't think, well, a lot of people may not know we exist, because like you said, we can walk down the street and they see, the way we present, and assume, we're just cisgender man. And a lot of us live stealth. I lived stealth for a long time, so yeah, I get it. I've been at my job 15 years. They don't have a clue. So there are certain spaces that I'm still stealth. But when it comes to being attacked and being murdered, all that kind of goes out the window.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to know why we aren't newsworthy.
Yeah.
When it comes to that.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect example, with the Black Lives Matter movement, and Tony McDade, a black trans man that was killed by the police.
Yes.
After, when they're marching with their signs, about George Floyd and other black men who were taken from us too soon, Tony McDade is not included in that.
Correct.
So there's an issue within our community when it comes to that, and we need to attack that first before we jump onto the, cis community and, the broader, the problem,
right,
about us not being recognized.
You were talking earlier about, going down to Washington, D.C. with your sign and being in the Black Lives Matter and having the Black Trans Lives Matter sign as well. I think that is also a problem because, we talk about BLM and they talk about Black Lives Matter, but when we want to be a part of that movement, a visible part of that movement, we're shunned or we're not given that space. And I think that's a huge problem in our community. It's often said that the oppressors become the oppressed become the oppressors, especially in the Black community. But let's talk about that a little bit. Where is our space? Why aren't we included? Because if it weren't for a lot of LGBTQ people who are outspoken, like Harvey Milk and like was his name, Bayard Rustin, Marsha P. Johnson, a lot of movements would never have started, and Black people have benefited from the fierceness, from the activism of the LGBT community. Whether they want to agree to it or not, or acknowledge it or not, it is that. How do you think that we can transition that? Either one of you that want to.
I'm not sure. I think that's tough because I think we also have to really look at the landscape of social media and technology. And I know from my past when I dabbled in doing like community activism more regularly and I was like out in Atlanta doing things, there's a certain level of fear that I noticed started to creep into my life and nervousness that I think is real. It's fearful when you're living and you're trans and like you have those natural anxieties around just existing in day-to-day life. Imagine that magnified to like a level where you're now like a spokesperson or the face of, or like you're marching, and like that leaves you so open and so vulnerable. You spoke about like getting like the threat from the billboard. Like that's a real fear. And think of like all the fear you hold just from walking out the door as trans. It's very, it's very difficult, I think, for some trans people to like even, welcome all that extra anxiety into their life of like all that. So I don't know how many people are really signing up for it. I know for me, I got to a point where is it my own personal comfort and safety and just finding a way to live on my own as an act of political resistance, or do I need to be trying to push for bigger things? Like, can I handle that? So I don't know. I guess it's person to person, but I think those are real fears that trans people face when being like in the spotlight with that stuff.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And I think one of the main reasons why I wanted to go to the march and have my sign up was to show, I'm Black first now. So my Black life matters. Because when you see me, you don't see trans, you see a Black man. So that's why I was all for the Black Lives Matter march and why I wanted to go. But then I said, okay, well, I'm Black and I have, the same issues, every other Black person faces, but then I'm trans, so that gives me a whole nother set of issues, that other people don't necessarily face. So I need to combine the two. Mm-hmm. So that's why I got my little sign made, and I went to the march, and I realized at that march, it's not the Black Lives Matter organization it's the Black Lives Matter organization that may have an issue with, including trans or including LGBTQ. But the people that support the Black Lives Matter movement were 100% supportive. Mm-hmm. Every person I passed, oh my God, that is amazing. I had the best time and felt so comfortable, because when I first got there, I was a little nervous. Like you said, it's being trans. I'm outing myself in front of millions of people. Right. But I felt so comfortable in that space with those people. Mm-hmm. So I said, okay, we can't blame the people for the message that the organization is putting out. Certainly. Because a lot of these people may not even know that the organization is, has excluded, a lot of us.
Yeah, the media, sometimes you got to take it with a grain of salt, because the media is sometimes just bullshit. I don't know if I can curse them.
You just did. It's okay.
So, a lot of times I think that happens a lot. You'll go into spaces and the world sometimes isn't as scary or isn't as bigoted as the media wants to make you believe. Watching the news and watching all that negative stuff all day will taint your mind sometimes, and you got to get out there. So maybe if we just get out there more and talk to each other more.
I think that conversations like this, I'm going to go back to that for just a quick second. The Lil Nas X video causes people to have conversations and look at things just a little bit differently. Zaya Wade, her journey is forcing people like Lil Boozy, badass, have conversations. Yes, I said it. Have conversations that they would maybe not have had before. It's having people to look at the T in the LGBT community just a little bit different and ask questions, maybe out of ignorance, but at the end of it all, maybe that ignorance could lead them to a different viewpoint. There was a story that we shared last week, and I'm gonna go to break, where the gentleman had a trans daughter, and for years, he was like, no, this is not who you're gonna be. This everything that he could, until he heard a story about a trans person killing themselves. And then he decided, let me listen. And now he's like her hero. And so it takes those conversations for people to understand. And then, okay, well, let me ask the questions that we don't know the answers to. Even being a part of the community, myself, there are questions that, I when you said earlier, I know I gotta go to break. Shut up. You said there's a bit of trepidation when you walk out the door as a trans person every morning, or on your daily journey. Why is that? Why are we seen as why are we targets in a community where we're just trying to exist? We're not out there trying to rob banks and sell drugs, and we're just trying to exist. Why is that so volatile to a lot of people in our very own community? And that's a hard place to be. I couldn't imagine. Well, as a black gay man growing up, I remember every day. I'm gonna take a break. Every day after school, I would hand somebody my books and book it, because there was these group of guys that would beat my butt every day. And one day, this is the true story, I'm not lying, got to the front door of my house, and the door was locked. And my mother and my aunt were sitting in the window, sipping, looking out the window. And they said, you got one choice. You can either fight them or fight us. So there was three of them, and there was my mother and my aunt. I was like, well, I ain't gonna fight them. So I had to prove to them that I had to stand up for myself. And after that, I had a little more respect. But I'm wondering how much fight we as a community need to continue to have. That was my analogy. I wonder how much fight we have to continue to have to say, look, enough is enough. We are a part of this community. I am worthy. I am, valuable. So this is a good conversation. Y'all have to come back more often. We have one more break in the hour, and we're gonna talk about this house that you're a member of, Alex. We'll talk about that.